Harare, Zimbabwe. 4 o'clock in the morning, the 15th of November, 2017. Soldiers pour through the gates of the national broadcaster and seize the studios. A few hours later, a general none of the country has ever seen before sits stiffly in front of the cameras in full uniform and reads a careful statement to a frightened nation. Tanks are on the streets. The 93-year-old president is a prisoner in his own mansion, and the general looks into the lens and insists, with a straight face, that nothing unusual is happening at all. It is one of the strangest power grabs in modern history. An army removing the only ruler the country has known for 37 years, while desperately insisting that this is absolutely, definitely not a coup. His name is Robert Mugabe, and the story of how the man who thought only God could remove him was cornered by his own generals, and the extraordinary lengths they went to avoid saying what everyone could see, begins with a wife, a crocodile, and a word no one was allowed to say. To understand November 2017, you have to understand what Robert Mugabe had become. In 1980, he walked out of a liberation war as a hero, the man who ended white minority rule and became Zimbabwe's first leader. For a brief moment, he was the great hope of a new Africa. But hope curdled into control. He crushed his rivals, rewrote the rules, and ruled for decades as the economy collapsed and the country emptied. By his 80s, he had ruled so long, so absolutely, that he genuinely seemed to believe he was untouchable. For years, whenever anyone suggested he might step down, his answer never changed.
Only God who appointed me will remove me from office.
But God was not the problem. The problem was much closer to home. By 2017, the real question consuming Zimbabwe was simple. Who would inherit the throne when the 93-year-old finally died? Two camps went to war inside the ruling party. On one side stood the war veterans and the security chiefs backing Mugabe's longtime enforcer and vice president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, a man so feared and so patient they called him the crocodile. On the other side stood a younger, flashier faction gathered around a far more surprising contender, Mugabe's own wife. Her name was Grace. 41 years younger than her husband, once his secretary, she had risen to lead the party's women's league and had developed a taste for power and for spending, so lavish the country nicknamed her Gucci Grace. Now she wanted the top job itself, and Mugabe was clearing the path for her. On the 6th of November 2017, he made his move. He sacked the crocodile. Mnangagwa was stripped of the vice presidency and fled the country. To Grace's faction, it was total victory. But to the generals who had fought beside Mnangagwa for 40 years, it was a declaration of war, and they had the tanks. On the 13th of November, the head of the army, General Constantino Chiwenga, did something unheard of. He stood before the cameras and openly warned that the military would step in to stop the purge. The ruling party called it treason. 2 nights later, the soldiers moved. They seized the state broadcaster, secured the capital, and placed Mugabe under house arrest. And then came the most surreal moment of all. On state television, Major General Sibusiso Moyo delivered the line that defined the entire operation.
We wish to make it abundantly clear, this is not a military takeover of government.
It was, of course, exactly that. So why the elaborate denial? Because the word coup was radioactive. A recognized coup would force the African Union and Zimbabwe's neighbors to condemn the takeover, suspend the country, and demand Mugabe's return. So the generals performed an extraordinary piece of theater. They insisted Mugabe was still president. They said they were only targeting the criminals around him. They kept him alive, safe, and nominally in charge, while they engineered his removal through the country's own institutions so it would all look perfectly legal. For a few days, the old man refused to break. Then the people did something they had been too afraid to do for decades. On the 18th of November, hundreds of thousands poured into the streets of Harare. not in fear but in celebration, demanding he go. The spell of terror simply shattered. The next day, his own party sacked him as its leader and gave him an ultimatum: resign or be impeached. That evening, Mugabe went on television, flanked by the very generals holding him captive, and the nation held its breath for the words, "I resign." Instead, he rambled for 20 minutes and announced he would keep going. It was breathtaking, and it changed nothing. On the 21st of November, Parliament began to impeach him. And as the members debated, the Speaker was handed a letter. Robert Mugabe had resigned, with immediate effect. The chamber erupted. The streets of Harare exploded into all-night celebration. After 37 years, it was over. Emerson Mnangagwa, the crocodile, was sworn in as president 3 days later. But the euphoria faded fast. The man who replaced Mugabe had stood at his side for decades. So had the generals. The faces at the top had changed, but the machine beneath them had not. Robert Mugabe lived out his last days a bitter, broken man and died in a Singapore hospital in 2019, aged 95. Removed in the end, not by God, but by the very men he had raised to power. This was the story of Robert Mugabe, told the Sankofa way. Go back and get it. If it moved you, tell us in the comments whose story we should tell next. Until then, stay upright.